Good evening, everybody. Tonight is May 2nd, 2015, and we're about to start the Avatamsaka Sutra lecture. So I invite you to please turn to the front cover of your book. We'll recite the name of the sutra and the assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai Namo Tafang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Nai Wei Po Buddhai.
Hi everyone, Amitofo. This is Jin Chuan Shi sitting on my right, and my name is Chin He, and welcome to another evening of our Saturday night lecture on the Avatamsaka Sutra at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I usually don't begin the lecture, Jin Chuan Shi does, so I'm a bit out of my element. So today we'll begin with the top of page 37 and page 36 for the Chinese. So if everyone look at their books, sutra pages, we'll begin by reciting we'll do two passages and we'll recite the Chinese. The Chinese will follow after Jin Chuan Shi, and then the English we can all recite together.
Okay, so the top of page 36. 无名为缘是身福，与缘得离福乃净。从因生果离则断，观察于此自性空，随顺无明其诸有，若不遂顺诸有断，此有不彼有物，无亦然。有彼有物亦然。十种思维心理着。
Okay, let's all recite the English together. With ignorance conditioning, there is production of feathers. When free of that condition, the feathers also end. Freedom brings a severance of retribution born from causes. Contemplating this one knows its emptiness of nature. If one follows ignorance, all existences arise. If one doesn't follow ignorance, existences are severed. This existing, that exists or doesn't, works the same. Through 10 kinds of thoughts, the mind leaves all attachments. So I remember in one of the lectures that we gave a few weeks ago, I said that one of the challenges, especially for a fairly junior, a very junior monk like myself, would always be to try to understand the principles of the sutra and being able to translate the principles into something that, say, I would understand to start off with, and then to see if that understanding can be shared with other people, especially in a situation like this when I have to lecture. So Jin Chuan Shi just recall a verse or the preface of when Venerable Master lectured the Avatamsaka Sutra, which was, what, 40 years? Many years ago?
40 years ago, like 40 years ago.
40 years ago. And so I'll let Jin Chuan Shi share the preface.
Okay, so this is, if you were to get, there's a little book that says the preface of the Avatamsaka Sutra, where the Venerable Master talks about what is the Avatamsaka Sutra. And it's just maybe 3 pages, but it's a very rich introduction. And one part about it, he says very clearly, was first he says, this sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, was spoken for bodhisattvas. He says, great body dharma knights, I think, something like that. Basically, great beings, the great bodhisattvas. And if we look at the sutra here, this is Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva speaking to Moon of Liberation Bodhisattva. So this is, you could say, bodhisattvas teaching bodhisattvas. And he says, however, it's not the case. He says, it's not the case that this teaching has nothing to do with you. And so he says, if you think this teachings, the sutra is the sutra, and I am just an ordinary being, it has nothing to do with me, it's just for teachings of the bodhisattvas, it's not possible for me to understand. It says, forever, the sutra will be the sutra, and you will be you. But instead, what you should think about is, this sutra is spoken for me. This is something I want to use in my life. And we want to take these principles we find in it, apply in our lives, and live the sutra. And he says, by doing that, what happens is that we in the sutra become one. We combine with the sutra, and it becomes kind of the way we see the world, the way we interact. And so he describes how to use the sutra in our daily cultivation. He says this is really, really important. And so I think sometimes the sutras are considered, especially the Avatamsaka, that, it's for the great bodhisattvas, and where's the connection to us? But the Master really encouraged us to take them, investigate it, and apply in our lives. And so today, in this particular section, we're going to go into it in a way that to make it very, very practical about how we can deal with our fundamental, you can say our ignorance, our cravings, our grasping, what the Buddha gave as a process for cultivation.
So I think we all know by now, especially with the nuns who lectured again on the 12 conditioned links, that the 6th ground is all about the 12 conditioned links. Okay? And the Buddha said that within the 12 conditioned links, ignorance, craving, and grasping, these 3 out of the whole 12, is the key to affliction. Meaning that if you can solve the problem behind ignorance, craving, and desire or grasping, wanting something, you can end, or you can solve the human condition. You can be in charge of yourself. So I have multiple layers of ignorance upon ignorance upon ignorance. For example, yesterday, Jin Chuan Shi came and told me, yesterday, to be precise, yesterday night at about, was it 9 something? About 9 o'clock, he said, hey, Jin Shi, don't forget, you have to lecture tomorrow. He says, I can't really help you because I have a lot of classwork to do. Jin Chuan Shu is now a student of the DRBU master's program. So there's a lot of homework and a lot of reading. So I was blissfully ignorant, going about my daily life until yesterday, 9:30. What? And you can't help me? I'm alone? Okay. So ignorance. And I have another story about ignorance. There's a... How shall I explain this story? So I realized that I mispronounce certain words. Okay, for example, let me ask him, how do you pronounce, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it, how do you pronounce calendar? Calendar. So I pronounce it calendar. Malaysian style, calendar, or maybe it's just me. So when Ramon Shaw always hears me say it again, what did you just say? What did you just say? He points it out, trying to correct my mispronunciation. But the funny thing about ignorance is that if you are ignorant about something, you don't know that you're doing, you don't know. Ignorance means you don't know. So one of the things that me and my brother have been mispronouncing was the brand of a shoe, sport shoe called New Balance. I'm not sure if it's popular in America. New Balance is a sport shoe. It's spelled Newbalance, New Balance. And it was only when I was, when I was in my late 20s, over dinner, it was me, my brother, and my sister-in-law. And me and my brother was talking about this shoe, but we call it New Balance. And ever since I was young, I've been calling that shoe New Balance, New Balance. And me and my brother was saying, yeah, this shoe, New Balance, New Balance. And then my sister-in-law had a question. He said, what are you guys talking about? What shoe are you talking about? New Balance. He said, what shoe is that? New Balance. It's such a popular shoe. He said, how do you spell it? So he spelled it Newbalance. He said, oh, New Balance. Balance, not balance. 20 years old, and I just found that out. So ignorance, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, I can add something. Fortunately, those ignorances are probably fairly harmless, and they actually seem to be probably fairly quick to change. So if you can probably figure out what we're talking about is that first couple of lines in the sutra text, which is, with ignorance conditioning, there is the production of fetters. If people have been following the sutra lecture, the first link of the 12 conditioned links is ignorance. And so this is the actual start of how we start this whole process of affliction and problems in our lives. And so I think what Jing He just described are three different instances when he first was in a state of not knowing and then learned something. And I don't know if it reduced your suffering at all.
Actually, when I learned it, I thought I knew my sister-in-law was right, but I also thought I was right. I thought, wait, balance, doesn't everyone pronounce it balance? Me and my brother had the same opinion. Yes, balance, balance, balance. I prefer balance, but...
So I think it's interesting to look at the actual idea of ignorance, because it's something that, as it's kind of defined with ignorance, is something that we don't really know. So it often requires somebody else to point it out to us, to say, oh, this is ignorant. This is something that you don't know. So when we want to study the Dharma, I think actually a very healthy framework to have when we start practicing is to really think we're really kind of ignorant. We're pretty deluded. I think there's the quote in Western thought, with Socrates, where he kind of would go to test various people, and the first thing he kind of gets to people is to say, if anybody thought they knew something, he would very quickly show them they really didn't know what they were talking about. And so his philosophy was, I really know that I'm really ignorant. And so but you know even less than me, so how can you know anything? And so he was not really well liked. But he was basically trying to get people to wake up to their condition. And his spirit was, at least if you know you're ignorant, that's the beginning of wisdom. And I think for us, 12 conditioned links is maybe one way to just look at that idea, is fundamentally we're in this state of ignorance, which is leading to our existence. And so we want to always keep this mentality, you know, we're not seeing things really clearly. And if somebody corrects us, then we, rather than defending our point of view, we can go, okay, really, what are they saying? How can I learn from what they say? Because our tendency oftentimes is that we think we're right, that we're not ignorant, and therefore we hold on to something. So it's easier to actually be in a space of kind of knowing that we are fundamentally not awake, and that we need to learn something to gain some understanding, to see things properly.
So coming back to what the Buddha said about the 12 conditioned links, it said 3 main problems: ignorance, craving, and grasping or desire. So as I was reading the sutra text, trying to figure out a solution to tonight's lecture, and it always, when I read the 12 conditioned links, it seems really insurmountable. As in, first, it's really complex because everything is linked one to the other. Ignorance, you end up with old age and death, and you begin back in ignorance. And it always seemed to me that the way out is really, really difficult. You know, to me, the 12 arhats become arhats because they practice the Four Noble Truths. They understand the Four Noble Truths. And Pratyeka Buddhas contemplate the 12 conditioned links, and they become Pratyeka Buddhas. And in my mind, I have this mental image of a Pratyeka Buddha as someone who lives in the mountains, in the Himalayas or somewhere where people don't know that he's there. And he spends his time meditating and looking at the flowers come up and dying and the seasons change. And he becomes a Pratyeka Buddha. And I'm like, how am I going to be that? How am I going to do that? That's so far away. Then Jin Trasher gave me an idea. He said, hey, you know, ignorance is the Four Noble Truths. It's contained within the Four Noble Truths. And the more I studied, the more I realized that the 12 conditioned links are how would I say, they are just a different way of speaking of the Four Noble Truths, and part of the Four Noble Truths, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. And because I had remembered studying the Noble Eightfold Path before, I went back to my notes, and I realized that from a Mahayana perspective, at least for myself, I've never encountered or tried to look at the Noble Eightfold Path from a Mahayana perspective and from a perspective of daily cultivation. And I realized that the patriarchs who have had set up our daily ceremonies, or the very act of just coming into the monastery and being able to bow to the Buddhas, if you do it right, if you do it with, how would I say, with less ignorance, as in you understand what you're doing, you are actually practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. And by default, that means that you are laying the foundation to get out of the 12 conditioned links. So it's not as... So when I look at it from that perspective, it wasn't as difficult, or it wasn't as far removed as I thought. I mean, I'm not saying that practice is easy, because every practice is very individual. People deal with their own afflictions. That's what practice is all about. But the whole Mahayana mechanism, the whole approach, making vows, bowing to the Buddha, taking refuge, holding the precepts, in one day you can very, very easily follow, or how would I say, be within the safety of the Noble Eightfold Path. So if we don't have, say, a support system or a mechanism to rely on, what happens? Well, I used to one day say, okay, I want to try to hold the precepts. And the next day or the very next hour, I will get a phone call from my friend saying, hey, let's go out. Let's go to this night. Let's go to a pub or something. Like, okay. And I would forget. I would be just like being in a dream. You know, in a dream, how you want to do something, one time, you want to do something, and then suddenly the whole environment changes in a dream. Poop, you're somewhere else, and your mind changes, and immediately you're thinking about something else, and it's not even weird. That happens to us all the time in the minds, but we just don't realize it. We don't quieten our minds down enough to understand what goes on in the mind. So the Noble Eightfold Path consists of question time. Anyone want to try? What is the first thing in the Noble Eightfold Path? There's very few people here, so every one of you gets a chance to answer. Anyone want to try? Right? Right speech, yes, but it's not the first one. Right view, yes, from the balcony at the top, from my, yes, right view. And what do we do on a daily basis? If you come, okay, say when you come to the monastery, what do we do that corresponds to right view? No? Okay. When we take refuge, what does that mean? Taking refuge with the Buddha. Taking refuge with the Buddha means you rely on the Buddha's teachings. From now on, that means taking refuge with the Buddha. You don't rely on other teachings. For example, when I was growing up, my mom would move. I remember she believing in Sai Baba once. Anyone here knows who Sai Baba is? He had a big afro. And my auntie, my mother's twin sister, and my cousins, they were also into Sai Baba. And apparently miraculous things happened, like from his picture behind a glass, a framed picture in their home, out came, they said it was cow dung. Yeah, ashes of cow dung. I don't know how they knew it was cow dung, or maybe it was just ashes. And I know a question. I just, like something miraculous. So my mom was with Sai Baba for a while. And I'm not sure if she went to other places, but eventually she found the Dharma. And through Venerable Master, she gave the Dharma a chance. And she investigated the Dharma. And she slowly understood. So, which was good because it led me to where I am right now. So taking refuge, that's what taking refuge means. And every time we come to the monastery, by right, the first thing that we should do is we pay our respects to the Buddha. And also my mom taught me when I was young, she said, when you bow 3 times to the Buddha. And when you bow, the first bow you say, Namo Buddha Ye. I'm not sure, but Namo Buddha Ye. Second bow, Namo Dharma Ye. And the third bow, Namo Sangha Ye. So Namo meaning I return to, I rely on, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha, meaning the Aryan Sangha. So first thing, when you come, and if you do it well, if you contemplate well. Anyone here remembers when we bow to the Buddha after lunch? What are the 3 bows that we make? Okay, I'll sing the first tune in English, and maybe to the Buddha I return and rely, vowing that all living beings understand the great way profoundly,
and bring forth the Bodhi mind.
To all of you online, I apologize, you can only hear my singing ability. Everyone here can hear everyone else. It's not so bad if you're in the room. So the next thing after right view is right resolve or intentions.
Want to say something about it, right? I think so. Actually, I think that's a really important point. I was talking with Jing He earlier today about the idea of taking refuge as corresponding with right view. I don't know if anybody's really thought about it before. If you think about right view in Buddhism, it's or you can think about just the idea of a view, because usually we don't really talk about that in our everyday life. But the view is kind of how we go about our lives. What are the things that we value? What are the ways when we look at something? What does that mean to us? What is the story we're telling ourselves? So there's a lot that goes behind a view that we take. And oftentimes, we can cling to our view very tightly. And the Buddha really encouraged us to let go of our views. If we look at an argument, pretty much somebody's attached to a view. And that's why we get into an argument. And so the Buddha's idea of a right view wasn't to say, this is the right view and you believe in this and everything is good, and you hold on to it really tightly. His idea of a right view actually is using your mind skillfully to understand things as they are, and over time, you will be able to let things go. So his right view actually leads to ultimately no view at all. That's the right view of Buddhism. It leads to no view at all. But for us, starting out in the cultivation, I think that taking refuge is actually a really interesting way to think about cultivating right view. Because as you come to the monastery and you pay respects to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as Jing He just described, in a way that sets your direction. It's like if you were to you go on a journey, or you're going on a hike and you have a compass. And you kind of look where north is, and then you kind of go north. You follow where you need to go. So when you come to the monastery, you set your bearing. I set my bearing on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And that's where I'm shooting for. That's where I'm going towards. And so with that kind of orientation, then as you practice, you know where you're going. Otherwise, you just come to the monastery and you just can sit down. And you can sit and you can meditate, or you can just follow along. But if you never really set your course, in a way you're just staying in the same place. You're not really going anywhere. So if you have the kind of right framework, then at least you can start walking the path. And that's why I think for the Eightfold Path, they start with right view in the very beginning, because you need to a little bit have the right framework to start with. If you don't have the right framework, then in a way, you could actually use the Dharma incorrectly. You can come to the Dharma and say, try to gain a lot. I think not so much in America, because in America we don't really believe in spiritual abilities. But in Asia, people come to Buddhism thinking they get some kind of spiritual power. Like Jing He just described Sai Baba, which I don't really know much about. But I guess the question would be, why would you want cow dung to come out of a picture? So. But I guess some people think that's a great thing to do. You can get some miraculous thing. And so you start seeking after it. And if you start cultivating the Dharma, thinking that somehow something miraculous will happen, and you'll get some kind of special ability or special powers, then that's not very skillful. That's, you could say, not the right view. So the Buddha really set up the framework to start with is, you come to the monastery and you pay respect to the Buddha, and you see right in front of us we have the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas on the altar, Guan and Bodhisattva in the back. And immediately your orientation is what? The Buddha. He's very calm, he's very serene, he's in a meditation posture, he's standing, with different hand gestures representing different things, like giving fearlessness or gathering in living beings. And so from these images and this kind of context, immediately the mind goes, okay, so this is where I'm orienting myself to. This is what I'm doing. And I think the other element of it, when we have that, is we also all of a sudden see where we are as well. If we're on a path, if you're on a map, you're going on a journey, you kind of know where you're going, but you also have to know where you are as well. And so at least my experience is when I'm really sincere and kind of imagine the Buddha's presence in front of me and paying homage to the Buddha, oftentimes I see my own faults and problems, the things that I've done wrong, and they just come up naturally because I go, oh, so this is where I am. And that's, I think those are things I need to let go of if I'm going to go in this direction. It kind of not only tells me where I'm trying to go, it also shows me where I'm at and the things I need to move on, the things I need to work on to kind of go on this path, on this process. So I think there's a couple elements to it. So I think taking refuge is a really good link. If you think about it, 'cause that's something we do every day. I hope everybody does every day. But at least the monastery we do every day. We do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon, we often do it in the evening. And so it's something that's a very regular part of our daily practice. And when we do it, it's an actual setting of our direction. Where are we going? Yeah.
So for someone who doesn't have right view, and I'll use myself as an example before. What happens is someone without right view will not understand or will not accept cause and effect. And I remember at one time, without being ignorant of cause and effect, my friends would come to me and say, hey, there's this feng shui master. And he can read palms, and he can tell your fortune, and he can bring you good luck. Oh, let's go. Make an appointment. And I used to do that. See astrologers, see this feng shui person who was not actually accurate, come to think about it. And who else did I see? One or two more. Yeah. Because without understanding cause and effect, you hope for something magical, something that you don't quite understand how it happens, instead of relying on planting the good causes and understanding that the proper results will come naturally. So not understanding cause and effect, not having the right view also means not understanding that things are not constant, that things are always changing, or people always change. So what happens? You always have this desire to want things to stay the same all the time. My phone shall always remain new and fast all the time. You will never get slow. I will never run out of memory. When I do, then, I need a new phone, or I'm not happy anymore with this phone, or my shoes are dirty, they are worn out, I need new pair of shoes. My clothes, I've worn them before, I want new clothes to wear. So that's what happens when you don't have right view. And then we come to right intention. That's number 2. Okay, Noble Eightfold Path, we have first right view. Second one is right intention. And you have to remember this, because I'm going to ask some of you before the lecture is over. So what corresponds to having the right intention in our daily practice? Would anyone like to try? Making vows? Oh, Yanlin, yes. Ding ding. Making vows. And taking refuge earlier, as we mentioned. To the Buddha I return and rely, vowing that all living beings understand the good way profoundly and bring forth the Bodhi mind. So isn't it great? You're actually getting a bargain. You do one vow, you're taking refuge in the Buddha, and you're making a vow at the same time. You don't have to make 2 vows, you just make 1 vow. Right? And how vows and the intention and having the right view works is, from a psychological point of view, it sets the mind up. It sets your intention. Even before you do something, it gives you a reason to do it. And this can be extremely powerful. In Mahayana Buddhism, we are always making vows on behalf of everyone else. Even if you have a vow that's related to yourself, it's only because you want to save all living beings. I vow to have the wisdom of the Buddha so that I can save all living beings. Right? And why is that important? Has anyone here tried to, say, cook for someone before? Or have you tried buying a birthday gift for someone that you care about? If you have, you will find that you do not mind doing more than what you would do if you were to do it just for yourself. For example, the first time when I bought the 10,000 Buddha repentance that's happening at CDTB right now, I was really ignorant and I didn't make any vows. So my intention to bow was just for myself. For 3 weeks, every day, at every incense, I walked into the Buddha hall, just wanting to bow for myself. I didn't even think about bowing for anyone else. It never even occurred to me. So I just bowed, and I bowed, and I bowed, and I bowed, and I bowed. And the second year, I had a thought. I said, I should bow for some of the people I know who can't be here. So I thought, okay. And what happened? I realized that it was very different. My whole experience, my whole mind was very different. First, I didn't want to be late to the Buddha hall at all. When I was buying for myself the first year, there was no real urgency because I was doing it for myself. But the second year, because I was buying for people, on behalf of people, I took extra care never to be late. I always tried my best to be in the Buddha hall early. That's one. Number two, I didn't feel as tired. Maybe it was because my body was more used to it, but I felt happier. I felt less tired. I felt happier doing it. What else? I felt that my time was better spent. That I had. It just made me happier. Just felt better overall. I don't know how to describe it. And a few other things that I can't recall right now. So I realized that when you do something on behalf of someone else, when you make that vow, it's really powerful. You get a source of vigor, of energy, a strength that comes from beyond what you can get if you just rely on yourself.
I thought of another thing in terms of taking refuge and maybe making vows and connecting together. Because just because I was relating to the Buddha image we see here in the monastery, you see the Buddha, very peaceful. I think if you want as another analogy out in the world, what do people usually see? We see the silver screen and we see movies, right? So I think a lot of people, for myself, included, before I ended up in the monastery, we don't really watch too many movies. But you see the movie and you see kind of like the movie stars and that kind of sets the mind in a certain intention. You go, oh, I want to do that. I want to be like that. And I think that's why they have all the advertisements. They have the sports stars, the movie stars, advertising their products because there's somehow a link that our minds go out to admiring something and then we start going towards that. We take that recommendation and we live our life for those things. And so here in the monastery, it's very different. The Buddha is here as a representative, and we take refuge in him. We don't go and take refuge in, I would say movie stars, because I think in the end, I think what I think I concluded fairly, not actually that early, but at one point I go, wait a moment, these people don't live very happy lives, I have to say. And so I was going for what else is there? And so we have the Dharma, and I have to say, from all my examination of the Buddhist suttas and sutras, the Buddha seemed to live a very happy life. He didn't actually have a very easy life. His life had a lot of things happen in it, but he was very peaceful and was able to benefit everybody around him. So what I always am amazed by when I touch the sutras is how wholesome they are, how they represent a person, a being who is completely pure and free. And so then, for me, that seeing that allows for me to bring forth a kind of resolve. The next thing that Jing Hesher was talking about is that we make a vow. And so we have the 3 refuges, which I think are really good things to contemplate, because we do that every day. And it's important to think about what we're doing every day, because that's what I think the depth of the practice comes from, is not just to mouth the words and just say it, but to actually reflect on them and see what the meaning is deeper in our lives. So first, I don't know, people know where those 3 vows come from. Do people know where our 3 refuges come from? Where in the Buddha's canon does that come from? Avatamsaka.
Let's go to the other 2 refuges.
Yeah. So so they come from the Avatamsaka Sutra, the pure conduct chapter, right? People know that. And in that one, the Buddha basically describes, or in the sutra describes, how the Bodhisattva, when they see different things, makes a vow. So the one that associated with the three refuges is these three. So it's the Buddha, I return and rely, and we vow that all living beings will make the Bodhi resolve. Right, the second one is the Dharma, and I guess people probably know that one, is what?
Deeply enter
the sutra treasury and have wisdom like the sea. So so the second one is about wisdom. So if you imagine, we have the Dharma, and then we make a vow, not just ourselves studying the Dharma, like here we have the sutra in front of us, but we hope everybody will be able to enter the sutras and have this profound wisdom. This wisdom that is, you could say, not ignorant. We see things as they are, so we're free of all suffering. So that's the second one. And the third one is, to the Sangha I return and rely, vowing that all living beings, what? Form together a great assembly, one and all in harmony. So the third one is about community in a way, right? It's basically coming together with Dharma friends, and then cultivating the way together in harmony and in peacefulness. And so we don't delight in strife. We don't delight in contention. That's actually a very important virtue, because sometimes there can be a tendency of the mind to want to create conflicts and afflictions. And that's actually really unwholesome, because that ends up making it very difficult for other people to practice. If we have a mind that maybe is a little bit jealous, or is just likes the excitement of people getting afflicted, that's kind of all this drama, that's actually not a good thing. In fact, it'd be much better to cultivate a mind that delights in people being harmonious and happy, and we're all working together. And so what are the things we cultivate for that? For instance, rejoicing in others' goodness and happiness. So we see somebody else is happy, rather than having jealousy, we rejoice and think, wow, great, they're really happy. Or we see people having really close friendships, helping each other on the way, we go, that's great, we really want to support that. That's the kind of spirit that we want to have for the last one. And so again, when we see the Sangha, and we see it as a harmonious, united assembly cultivating the way, then we also in our minds make that aspiration, right? We have that aspiration to try to cultivate that for all living beings.
When I was young, I was really mischievous. So as Jin Chuan Shi was speaking about having a harmonious Sangha, I remember doing this to my younger brother all the time. Say if you're in a car, you would have this imaginary line, his space, my space, and my hand would go across, or my leg will go across, and it will irritate him, and in the end will irritate my mom, who will turn behind and try to squeeze or pinch me to punish me. So yeah, harmony. So if we understand how right view and right intention can affect the mind psychologically, and how it can set the tone for, you could say, everything that we encounter in life, then we have a choice. We could come to the monastery or at home, and we could just do the 3 vows and say the 3 refuges out of habit. That's one way. And I have done that. To the Buddha, okay, just do the 3 vows because everyone's doing the vows. And I have to do the 3 vows, and I bow, I just finish with it. Or I could have taken the opportunity to really bow. And when I bow, not hold to the form of bowing, but to deeply contemplate in my mind and really try to make it my personal vow that all beings understand the way, and bring forth the Bodhi mind, and try to make it really part of how I feel, how I am, and then see what happens. And every time I bow, the 3 bows, I have a choice. either to slowly embody what it actually means and to really understand, or just to repeat the words, just like a song, and just to do the bows, just like an exercise. So there's a choice. And unless we try, we'll never really find out.
One more thing, because I thought of when he was talking about the bowing to the Buddhas, just to share, at least for me, one thing that I found really helpful is actually contemplating Master Hua, or you can say the Buddhas, but particularly Master Hua, because we always bow 3 times to the Master Hua, and actually contemplate his presence, like just actually being in front of us, and then bowing, respectfully. Because I think, at least for me, if I would just imagine Master Hua actually being there, my actual actions would be very different. I don't think if the actual Master Hua was actually here, we were actually bowing to him, would we just very casually do it. Especially actually in the monastery, I think people know when monks greet each other, and we've been away for a while, we would bow to each other. And my experience is bowing to, let's say that Abhayagiri monks come down, Ajampasano comes down on say the first Tuesday of the month, and then we pay our respects. And for me, having that person really there, if I was to very casually do it, I kind of just leave. He'd be like, this junior monk really doesn't know how to be respectful. And there'd be definitely something's not quite right. And so for me, actually contemplating the presence of Master Hua or the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas kind of brings forth that sense of sincerity. And also the other element that I kind of contemplate is that I do believe that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have abilities to read my mind too. Therefore, I can't have too much of a confused mind when I'm bowing, because otherwise then we go, well, he's just doing the outside form and not really doing the inside mind ground. So that to me kind of helps me bring myself back to not be so casual. Of course, given the monasteries, and our habits, and I'm oftentimes too much in a rush that I forget. But whenever I try to bring myself back, I found the thing that grounds me the quickest is if I just imagine Master Hua being right there in front of me. And then I just bow very respectfully. And then somehow, my body just pays attention. Yeah.
It really works. Mai is saying very good point. And I second that because when I was driving, when I was a layperson, I would always imagine I'm driving Kuan Yin Bodhisattva next to me, so I would not get so angry. Like, Kuan Yin is here, okay, I should not get angry, I cannot get angry. And it helps. Expedient means, yeah. Okay, so quiz time. We have right view, right intention or resolve. What's next? Right speech, yes. And we'll do 3 together at the same time. Okay, we have right speech, right action, yes. And the third one, what you do to earn livelihood, yes, these 3. And in our daily practice, what does that correspond to? Right career, yes, that's right livelihood. Precepts, that's right, precepts. So we have precepts which, how would I say, because of our ignorance, and we don't really understand cause and effect. We don't know what I do right now, what will the cause be? What will the result be? Yes, ignorance, you see? So we have precepts to help us, just like when you drive, you have driving rules, right? Red light, stop. Green light, go. Even a kid knows that. But for life, we have precepts to help us in case we don't know what we're doing and we don't want to end up in trouble. So one of the things that we should bring to precepts would be the first 2, right view and right intention. Meaning, why am I taking the precepts? What's my intention in taking the precepts? So I have this story to share. And I'm not sure if I said it before. When I was in Australia, I met this layperson. And he wanted to take the 5 precepts. But like most people, he had many doubts. Because his intention of taking the precepts was for himself. He was only thinking about himself. He said, if I take the precepts, then when I go to work, I can't do certain things. Like, I can't entertain my clients. Then, and he was afraid that he would affect his life. And there were other things as well that he brought up, many, many doubts about holding the precepts. And he slowly discovered by himself that because GCDR, every day we do the vows and all that. And he started realizing that holding the precepts was not just for himself. And he was married, and I think he was planning to have children. And he realized that if he held the precepts, that means he would be a good father in a certain sense. He would set a very good example for his children. Examples that nowadays would be difficult to find. He would be a good role model. He realized that he would be more responsible to his family, his father, his extended family. And when he realized that, all his doubts vanished away. He said, I shouldn't even have any doubts. I should just go ahead and take the precepts. And that's what he did. So having the right view and the right intention. And incidentally, the Bodhisattva also holds the precepts, but he never holds the precepts for himself. He holds the precepts on behalf of all living beings. So just now I mentioned that when it's over there. Can you pass us the battery?
You can just do that.
What was I saying? So previously I mentioned that yes, when you have the right vows, when you do something on behalf of someone else, there's a strength that comes from somewhere, and that strength is, in this case, so strong that when this person, this Singaporean, when he saw how precepts could be so beneficial to the people around him, every selfish thought that he had, or I wouldn't say selfish, any thought that he had regarding himself just seemed insignificant. It was still important, but the importance compared to how responsible he could be and what kind of role model he could be, just like night and day.
Okay, it's almost out of battery too. So
Okay. Kind of lost my train of thought.
I'll say a few words about precept. So if we look at the three that were just listed, it was right action, right speech, and right livelihood. And so the Buddha broke down the precepts into these three areas to look at through the Eightfold Path. And so for us, how can we look at that? So right actions, the Buddha pretty much linked up with the first four precepts, I believe. Not killing, not stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying. I believe no intoxicants also, I think, included in that. And then the next one, which is right speech. Okay, yeah, the speech one is not included in that. So there's four, because the right speech one includes the lying. So then the right speech has lying, false speech, so lying, harsh speech, idle speech, and backbiting, slander. When you basically split up friends, right? And the final one is about right livelihood. And that one's about living a life that we have to make a living. We don't do it in a way that hurts other living beings. And so the Buddha basically said, if you are living in this world, try to do these things in a way that is skillful, so that will lead us out of suffering. And so that's what, when we're just talking about the precepts, is we want to live a life that's within the framework of becoming awakened by taking these guidelines as part of our lives. But the framework, though, what I thought was good to kind of point at is when we just open it up to say you come to the monastery and you take refuge, the holding of the precepts then is not just for yourself, just for our own benefit, for us to stay out of trouble, which is one way we think about it oftentimes, which is good. I mean, to keep ourselves out of trouble is is already very good. But in addition to that, we're doing it for other living beings as well. In the text, they actually talk about how holding the precepts are the greatest gifts we can give other people. Why? Because let's say I have a commitment not to kill, not to harm other living beings. Well, other living beings bit by bit will feel very safe in my company. I think you come to the monastery and most people feel fairly safe in the monastery, right? You don't feel somebody's going to attack you, usually, hopefully not. At least the monks aren't going to attack you. So we're taking quite a few precepts that are around our actual interactions with each other. And so I think that's what creates the sense of safety. And you come to the monasteries because people immediately feel, here is a place where precepts are respected. There's a general framework for our lives living here in the monastery. And so when you come into the monastery, you're entering this field of protection in a way. And so we ourselves hold these precepts, and the people who come into this field also hold these precepts. And so I think if you were to come in the monastery and start breaking precepts, I think in your heart you know something's really not quite right. You know, because something here tells you we're here living by a different standard. Well, if you're out in the world, and if you're not committed to the precepts, it's a whole different standard that's operating. So here in the monastery, I think the safety that one feels, the kind of sense of refuge and peacefulness, actually a lot of it comes from the precepts that's protecting it. Yeah.
And precepts, there are many kinds of precepts. For example, the 5 precepts that are considered the minimum for laity, 5 precepts. And the 5 precepts, if you go and understand what the Buddha said about using the right causes to create the right kind of results, the 5 precepts are the minimum for a humanly existence. Which means that if you are human, the 5 precepts are the minimal behavior you have to observe to be considered normal and for a future human rebirth. That's what the Buddha said. And then the next step above the 5 precepts are the 8 and 10 precepts. And the 8 and 10 precepts are the minimum for a heavenly rebirth. That means you get reborn in the heavens as a deva or as a god. And sometimes even for sagehood. And then the bhikshu precepts, as what Jin Chuan She and myself hold, are the minimum to be an arhat, to get out of the 12 conditioned links. And then we have the bodhisattva precepts. And how many people here hold the bodhisattva precepts? Oh, okay. Someone gave a thumbs up. And if anyone here holds the bodhisattva precepts, they understand that the nature of the precepts, the function is to make the observer of the precepts give forth a right, how would I say, what's the right word? What's the right way to phrase? To give rise to a truly compassionate mind. A mind that puts other people beyond yourself. A mind that puts investigating the Dharma sometimes as more important than other worldly affairs. Because if you put that into practice, you will create the right conditions. And what do the Bodhisattva precepts lead to? Would anyone like to try? If you observe the Bodhisattva precepts, what will be the result? No? Buddhahood, yeah. That's why the Bodhisattva precepts are so rare, and it's really hard to find someone who actually holds the precepts or has taken the precepts, because they are the foundation for Buddhahood. Imagine that just by observing the precepts well and trying your best to your capability and you apply them, you are creating the very foundation for Buddhahood. And it comes from also having the right intention and having the right view, and you combine it with the precepts.
So I think another point for the precepts that's really important is that the precepts are for ourselves. They're not for looking at the next person next to me. That's actually a really important point, because what happens with our minds is oftentimes we take a standard and we're trying to live by something, and we're a little bit frustrated. We kind of start looking outside, and we start blaming people or picking out faults and doing these kind of things. And there's one line that really stuck with me in the second ground. We studied the second ground before. I don't know if people remember. The second ground, Bodhisattva, is actually the one who perfects the paramita of precepts. And so there's this one part when he says the Bodhisattva sees another living being breaking the precept. And I don't know if people were here for that lecture. Do people remember what the Bodhisattva thinks? Does he think, aha, you broke the precepts, haha, I'm much better than you, you're just a bad precept holder? What do people remember, or would like to guess? What does the Bodhisattva think? I remember the sutra was quite striking to me, because he says, the Bodhisattva says, I cannot know why this living being broke the precept. Only the Buddhas know the causes and conditions, has the wisdom to know the causes and conditions behind this living being. So the only thing I will do is I will hold the precepts more purely and better to benefit living beings. That's his contemplation. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting contemplation. So his thought is, when he sees somebody breaking a precept, he says, I don't know why they're breaking the precept. How do I know what his story is? How do I know what's actually going on in their mind? Only the Buddha really knows all the causes and conditions that make that person in that experience doing what they're doing. How can I judge it? How can I put my own expectations on that person and judge that person in a certain way? In fact, what can I do? I can purify my own heart and do a better job. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting contemplation, in terms of precept holding. And I thought it was a really useful one for if we're cultivating the precepts and living in community, is when we see somebody, who might not be holding it that skillfully, to not judge them or look down upon them or do anything with our mind in those ways, but just think, how do I know what's really going on? The best thing I can do is just look inside my own heart and purify my mind for the sake of the other person, so I can help the other person ultimately. So it's not to look down on anybody. So I thought that was a really skillful approach. So that's one thought for the precepts. Okay.
Okay, so far you come to the monastery, you bow, meaning you remind yourself, I'm taking refuge in the Buddha, in the teachings, in the Sangha, and I'm vowing for all living beings. Okay, so you have the right view, you have the right resolve, and you've been observing the precepts. It's easier to observe the precepts, say in a monastery, automatically you're more mindful. I've seen people who outside, when they're walking, they talk very loud. Oh, and the moment they walk through the door, start whispering. It's easier to be mindful in the monastery. Something happens, I'm not sure what. And then there's another set of three that comes. So we've had right view, okay, we've had right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Would anyone like to guess what the next three are? Right. Right effort. Right mindfulness. Right concentration. And what does that mean in terms of what we do at the monastery? Do you just come and bow to the Buddha, maybe have lunch and leave? Some people do that. That's okay. But what else do you do when you come to the monastery? Some people cook. They cook very delicious food. We have services, ceremonies. We have events. We have retreats. We have sessions. And a very convenient way to describe all of that would be practice. People come here to practice. For example, David at the back never fails. He comes twice a day to practice, to sit. He sits right at the back. He's a constant presence in the monastery. Every day without fail, he comes and he sits and he meditates. Practice. So why is practice important? Everyone's staring at the ceiling or looking down at the floor. Okay, there are many forms of practice. Okay, David does two that I know over here. He recites the Buddha's name. And tomorrow we're having a full day Buddha recitation for anyone who's interested in joining. So David recites the Buddha's name and he meditates. What's happening at CDTB right now? The bowing repentance. Bowing is another practice. And when there's no bowing repentance at the city, from 7 to 8 they recite the sutras. That's another practice. So there are myriad practices. There are different, many different, what we call dharma doors. Doors because they are the gateway. You open the door, you enter something. So you enter into wisdom, a gateway, a dharma door. How can practice help us in our daily lives? Let's say reciting the Buddha's name. How can reciting the Buddha's name be useful right here, right now? Okay, I'll give you guys the answer, okay? 4 things, okay? There's 4 things. One is it prevents the mind from going crazy. It prevents unwholesome states of mind. For example, if Jin Chuan Shi right now is reciting the Buddha's name and I'm doing this, if he's really reciting the Buddha's name, he knows what I'm doing to him, but because he doesn't let the mind move, he won't get afflicted, he won't get irritated, or he won't get like, what is Jinhe doing? You see, what's he doing? He won't move, he just sit there happily reciting the Buddha's name. So first, just by reciting, it prevents unwholesome states of mind from arising. You could be driving, you could be walking, you could be standing in line. Something could happen to make you upset, to make you angry, to make you really sad. But if you're really reciting the Buddha's name, your mind, you're holding your mind with the Buddha's name, it doesn't deviate. So what's the opposite of that? If it prevents unwholesome states from arising, sorry? Yes, it brings about wholesome states. So if, say, it abandons wholesome states, let's put it this way, it abandons wholesome states. So if I'm already doing this, and Jin Chuan Shi, if he's not reciting the Buddha's name, it's like, I can't hit Jin Shi because I'm not supposed to hit another monk or anyone. And he's getting frustrated, he's getting agitated. Then, okay, I'll start reciting the Buddha's name. And he really starts reciting the Buddha's name, really concentrate on Buddha's name. And he's really concentrating on Buddha's name, he can't be thinking about being angry with me. So I keep on doing this, but he's really reciting the Buddha's name. So from a mind that's being agitated, irritated, a very unsteady state of mind, he recites the Buddha's name until he calms down. So he abandons unwholesome states. So the corresponding other two would be to arouse wholesome states and to maintain wholesome states. So in other words, just reciting the Buddha's name, if you do it skillfully, with proper concentration, you can actually gain control over how you feel. And if you do it skillfully enough throughout the whole day, you can be calm and peaceful the whole day.
Okay, I'm going to add something. We're using that example of reciting the Buddha's name. So I will say one thing that we could use if somebody's tapping you or doing something is we always recite in the Avatamsaka Sutra how in the Amitabha's Pure Land the birds sing, the wind blows, and what happens? People remember? We recite it every other day in this monastery. Mindful of the Dharma, mindful of the Sangha. So So what I think is actually a very useful contemplation is whenever those things, anything that's going on around us, all it's telling us to do is be mindful of the Buddha, mindful of the Dharma, mindful of the Sangha. So every time somebody taps you, Amitabha, 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 just reminding you, recite the Buddha's name. And then you find if you start slowly making that your framework, your kind of, when you say your view, then bit by bit your life becomes very peaceful. You're always mindful of the Buddha. As we said in the very beginning, because that's your framework, your direction, you know how to respond. So I find that to be a really helpful contemplation, because then everything around you, regardless of whatever the situation is, you can take that in. You don't have to. What I find doing that does is, I don't have to reject experience. I don't have to push out experience. Because what I find is, if I try to, and I think everybody has a different process, so I'm just sharing something that I find helpful, is that if I recite the Buddha's name, and I'm trying to be really concentrated, and they say somebody is actually tapping me, which actually doesn't happen too much in the monastery, because we usually keep our kind of physical space.
Just for the record, I've never done anything to change my...
Yeah, he doesn't do anything strange to me. But in terms of just being out in the world, if you're in an environment that's noisy, or I remember we were actually at an interfaith retreat one time, and we were at one place where there's a really, really heavy drumming, boom, 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 boom. And I think one of the nuns from another religion, the Brahma Kumaris, we were all very young then, or maybe it was 2002 or 2001. So maybe 20 some years old, and she saw us kind of getting afflicted. She said, you could just see it as reciting, boom, Amitabha. She's from another religion. And we said, oh yeah. And I found that I tried that out, and that helped a lot. So what I found is I don't have to basically withdraw my senses and try to concentrate on something inside and try to push out sensory input, which I think if somebody has some real solid samadhi, they could do that. But what I try to do, and I find it to be easier, at least for myself, is to actually take the senses in and then turn them into something wholesome, to remind me to do something wholesome. So then any interaction coming in, I go, Amitabha, Amitabha, Amitabha. So things that you could find annoying usually, if somebody is trying to do something that's annoying, rather than getting annoyed, you can just take that as a reminder to recite the Buddha's name. And then I think that's just like going to the Pure Land in the here and now. So I think so just you brought up the Amitabha recitation. And that would be, for instance, we talk about right mindfulness, we talk about right effort, and starting to develop right concentration. I think the idea in Buddhism for right concentration for the bodhisattvas is really to enter the kind of focused states of mind that they enter samadhi. And for us, it's kind of, at least for me, it's just kind of trying to keep my mind from getting afflicted. But at least that's a pretty good place to start. Yeah.
So another way of saying what Jinchuan just said is that you don't allow the conditions to control you. You don't allow the condition to make you feel angry or upset. And instead, you gain control or freedom over yourself by relying on the Buddha's name. And I had this experience when I was in Australia at GCDR, and because I was the only monk there, and they had a purifying boundary ceremony, and because I was the only monk, I was standing behind everyone. So the line went from the Buddha hall, let me see how far, maybe about half a mile. They walk through they have a trail called the 18 Arhat Trail, and around and come back. So at that time, it was just the winter, a very mild winter, transitioning into a warm summer at GCDR in Melbourne. And I remember coming to the ceremony, walking about for 4 or 5 minutes from the monks' quarters. And when I set out, it was cool. So I had on 2 or 3 layers. And when the ceremony started and we went outside, just like the weather at Berkeley now, the sun came up and I started getting warm. And I started feeling afflicted. Because I come from Malaysia, I don't like warm weather. Warm weather makes me very very upset. No, yeah, the weather has control over me. So I was walking behind everyone, and I remember thinking to myself, it's getting warm. I don't like this. Everyone else was chanting the Great Compassion mantra, but in my mind I was saying, I don't like this. Why are they walking so slow? Why do we have old people in line? They should not be walking. Can we walk faster? That was going on in my mind. And then suddenly I realized that, hey, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be reciting the Great Compassion mantra. And here I am complaining about the weather. Letting a simple thing like the weather make me upset. So, like Chinchwasha said, okay, I just started reciting the Great Compassion mantra like I was supposed to be, and I forgot all about that. And I only remembered a few days later during the weekend when I was speaking to someone, and I recalled, oh, I was actually upset. And because I wasn't reciting the Great Compassion mantra, and when I did, I totally forgot. And I really forgot until a few days later that I was upset. So that's the power of recitation.
A final thought with that. The other practice I think is very useful, for instance, the Great Compassion mantra. If people maybe don't recite the Buddha's name, but maybe they have a mantra practice, if you look at the Great Compassion repentance, I just thought of linking it to the Eightfold Path for today's lecture, was if you notice there is a section in the very beginning. What we do is we recite Guanyin Bodhisattva's name, then we bow to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So we're kind of setting our direction, right? We're taking refuge, purifying our hearts and our minds, and that's the direction we're going in. And then what do we do next? We make vows, right? We make the 10 vows that Guanyin Bodhisattva did. We say, I vow to quickly know all dharmas. I vow to soon obtain the wisdom I vow to save all beings. He goes, you go through these 10 vows, and then after the 10 vows, what happens? Do you remember? What happens next after the 10 vows? For people who've done the Great Compassion repentance. This is like a quiz lecture, I guess. If I face the mountain of knives, the mountain of knives itself breaks up. If I face the boiling oil dries up. If I face hot weather in Australia, the hot weather stops bothering me. And the spirit of that section of it, and I was recently translating it with Mr. Rounds, was that it's from holding the mantra. So if we hold the mantra really well, then whatever situation we face, we turn the situation. So they say if we meet Ashuras, the Ashuras, their hearts and minds naturally are subdued. They become peaceful. And so I always thought that was really interesting, is that the power of the mantra, the efficacy is, we don't have to go do anything. We don't have to go out and try to solve the world's problems. If we can be really sincere in our recitation all the time, somehow, quote unquote, magically, this is kind of the magic in Buddhism, everything around us works out fine. You could try to make it psychological. Maybe your mind's always peaceful, so everything around you doesn't affect you. But in the Dharma, the spirit of the Dharma in these teachings, I think there's something deeper happening. First, you're making these vows, and you're connecting up to Guanyin Bodhisattva's vows and energy. And then because you're from that place, you're actually, how would I describe it? The mantras are the actual kind of the spiritual words of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so there's something that go really, really deep that we all are interconnected with. And so by reciting them, somehow there's a resonance. If people think of music, when you turn on really agitated music, somehow the whole surroundings become very agitated. If you turn on something that's very peaceful, the mind somehow naturally settles down. So if we're sending out those vibrations, in our minds at least, and I think our minds definitely have an effect on our surrounding areas too, what we'll find is bit by bit, the surrounding areas get transformed. So I always felt that was a really, I always liked that part because it always gave me this sense of kind of this fearless quality to it. It's like, I can go anywhere and I'll be fine. I can go even down to the hells. It says if you go to the hells itself will disappear. So if you go wherever you go, if you have that solidity of practice, you can be fearless. You can go anywhere. And so I thought, so if you think about the Eightfold Path with our just one ceremony in the monastery, it's all encompassed within it, right? We bow to the Buddhas, we take refuge, we make vows, we then mindfully recite the Great Compassion mantra, right? And then at the very end, we repent and we take the refuge actually at the end, and then we transfer the merit. We send out the goodness out. And so within this practice, we do all of the process of the Eightfold Path. And so if we really apply it, not just follow along, but we see how each part of it interrelates with one another, this is actually bringing us back to the sutra text tonight, is this deals with you could say the causes of the problems in the 12 conditioned links, the causes for the suffering results. Just to link it to this particular line, we talk about the fetters. The fetters, I don't know if people know what fetter means, but fetters are often like chains, things that chain us down. And Buddhism has quite a lot of fetters it talks about, for instance, a view of ourselves, attachments to various things, they hold us down. And so for the fetters to disappear, we first need to work on the ignorance, and then the fetters disappear. And the third line, I thought the translation wasn't very clear. When it says, freedom brings the severance of retribution born from causes. I don't know, do people kind of know what that means? I read that, I'm like, what? What does that mean? I looked at Master Hua's commentary. So what I think it means, and people who know the Chinese, can read the Chinese directly, can correct me, is basically it's saying, if we can stop the causes of the 12 conditioned links, then we become free from the retribution of the 12 conditioned links. We get free of the results of 12 conditioned links. And what does that mean? Basically, the cause of the 12 conditioned links is what Jing Hezhi said at the very beginning of lecture. It's ignorance, it's craving, and it's clinging. Those are the three causes of the 12 conditioned links. The rest of the other 9 links are the results. So the Buddha is basically telling us, work at the causes. If you try to work at, say, one of the links that people remember, say, the 6 sense organs. So what are you going to do with the 6 sense organs? You already got them, so you're kind of stuck with them. So what you can do is work on what you're doing with the 6 sense organs. So for instance, you don't go out and crave. So basically, the Buddha gave these are the 3 places to work at in our minds and our hearts. And the process to really cultivate it is actually with the Eightfold Path, which was what we try to do today, was to say, if you want to do with those 3, ignorance, craving, and clinging, by cultivating the Eightfold Path, naturally we will find that our ignorance decreases, our craving decreases, our constant clinging and attaching to things decreases, and we become more and more free of the fetters, the chains that hold us down. If you know the Eightfold Path, in fact, what happens is that it cycles around. I don't know if you want to talk about it, for me to talk. Okay, the Eightfold Path circles around. It's not just one way, and you the right concentration, you're done. What happens is you go from right view, kind of an understanding of things, and you start cultivating, and as you get to the very end, quote unquote, right concentration, it loops back around. And we develop really right view. You can say, it's this transcendental right view, or experiential right view, meaning we actually see it for the way it is. So in the beginning, we just kind of have a sense of it. We read the sutras, we go, okay, I want to cultivate this path, this Dharma makes some sense. I'm bowing to the Buddha, and I'm saying that's the direction I want to go in. But as we cultivate bit by bit, more and more we go, yeah, this makes a lot more sense. This actually works. And then ultimately, what happens is we actually get there. We actually become the Buddha. Right? So that's the culmination of this path, is basically we walk it, and bit by bit we remove the ignorance in our minds, the craving in our minds, the clinging in our minds, and we become free.
So regardless of if you come to the monastery or you have a practice at home, if you do it right with the right kind of mindset, you are already fulfilling all the aspects of the Eight Noble Path. And this morning, Marek and myself went to the field outside. What's the field called? Martin Luther King?
People's Park?
No, People's Park.
No, that's not People's Park. That's,
Okay, there's a park just right outside, opposite Trader Joe's. You know, the Trader Joe's is on one corner, is on the opposite corner. And they had what they call a Berkeley blessing of bicycles. So we had all these Berkeley residents come with their bicycles.
only in Berkeley.
Oh, yeah, only in Berkeley. They came with all their bicycles, and so they invited Buddhists among myself and then Marek. They had a Zen priest. They had a Hindu, someone representing the Hindu faiths. They had two interfaith chaplains, one representing, I'm not sure, some kind of like natural, like earth religion, or all the religions in the world. And then someone representing Judeo-Christianity, is that right? Judeo-Christianity. So they all gave the individual blessings, and when it came to our turn, what we told them was, when you ride a bicycle, you need to be trained. You have either you start off with training wheels, or you learn to find your balance, and then finally when you get on the road, you need to train yourself to spot out for things that might hurt you, like cars, other bicycles, road signs, potholes, you know, things like that. And you slowly get better. And at the same time, we use that as a metaphor for them to say that they should also train their minds to understand what are the things, just like in traffic, that can cause them trouble or accidents. Within the mind, what are the things that they encounter in daily life that could bring them afflictions? So training. So regardless of whether you come to the monastery, or you have your practice at home, or your mental state of mind as you go throughout the day, the mic suddenly became louder. It's a training. You do what you can. If this is as much as you can do, you try your best, and then you do a little bit more to see, and then you slowly do more. And this is why I find the sutra so important. And linking this back to what Jin Chuan Shu said just now about the Bodhisattva on the second ground and the Bodhisattva on this ground, is they are extremely inspirational. The Bodhisattvas do what normal people think they are not capable of doing to show us our potential. People who have met Venerable Master, for example, have reported that sometimes they feel really, really inspired. Some people who encounter the teachings, the Dharma, feel really, really inspired. Some people who see other lay people practicing get really, really inspired. Reading the sutras, learning about what the Bodhisattvas are capable, show us too what we can do. So making vows, I'd just like to come back to making vows before we wrap up. To me, making vows is kind of like taking your heart and mind and stretching it. Stretching, stretch. The bigger the vow that you make, I vow to save all living beings, you stretch your heart and your mind, and you increase the plasticity, the pliancy, the softness of your heart and mind. So I just like to show the effect of making great vows, and I'll use the Bodhisattva on the first ground, because the Bodhisattva on the first ground has all this. He has been described as having this really 10 great qualities of mind and these 10 great faiths. And I just quickly show you, just for you to get a sense of the mind that he has. He says, the Bodhisattva on the first ground has a beneficent mind, meaning his mind is always thinking about how to benefit people. He has a very supple mind, meaning very soft. It's difficult to get him upset. The mind is subdued and very adaptive. He's inclined towards goodness, is very harmoniously smooth mind, a straight mind, unscattered, undisturbed, unsullied. Those are the qualities of his mind. And then he has a list of 10 faiths, which is he has faith in the Buddha, he has faith in the path walked by the Buddha, he has faith in being able to develop the practice of the paramitas, meaning he has faith or confidence in himself. He knows that he can do what other great bodhisattvas can do. He has confidence that he can perfect the 10 powers of the Buddha, which means he really believes that he will be a Buddha. He has the capability. He has no doubt at all. He knows he's not yet a Buddha, but he knows he can be one. He knows he can achieve the indestructibility of the Dharma, meaning he can rely fully on the teachings of the Buddha. He has faith in the Buddha's powers, and he has these 10 great faiths, and he has these 10 great qualities of mind. And the only way he gets it is by making vows. So the Bodhisattva on the first ground, he makes these 10 great vows, and it's only a result of making that 10 great vows that expands his mind, that he can have these 10 qualities of mind and the 10 faiths. And a quick summary of his vows are, he vows to make offerings to all Buddhas throughout the 3 periods of time till the end of space. That means he wants to worship all Buddhas, meaning he wants to learn from every Buddha. He makes a vow to uphold, preserve, and accord with all the dharmas proclaimed by the Buddhas.
Actually, that's a very big vow, right? All the Buddhas, the 3 periods of time, the 10 directions everywhere. However, just to link it to a practice we do every day, or if you come for the morning in the monastery here, the great compassion and repentance, actually we're making an offering of the flower, that's actually the contemplation. So I just want to point that out. If you actually reflect on the contemplation that we do when we offer the flower, we actually send out and make the offering to all Buddhas in all directions. So.
He makes a vow to want to ask every Buddha to turn the Dharma wheel. He makes a vow to want to teach all practices of every Bodhisattva. He wants to teach all beings, form or formless. He wants to know all the different aspects of all the worlds so they can also teach beings. He wants to be of like mind as all other bodhisattvas, meaning he sees all other bodhisattvas as his inspiration, and he wants to be just like them. So even the bodhisattva on the first ground is inspired by other bodhisattvas. He always wants to be in the bodhisattva path, he doesn't want to leave it, and he wants to gain perfect enlightenment in all Buddhas, in all worlds, to manifest as a Buddha so he can save all living beings. So basically the Bodhisattva on the first ground, because of his vows are so big that he's already laid the foundation for the next 10 grounds. How awesome is that? So he's only on the first ground, like first grade, but he says, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to save all living beings, I want to do this. And because of that, his progress through all the 10 grounds is already fixed, just by expanding his mind. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any questions or comments or things people want to add. So maybe we can just, if people can ask after we make announcements, but one thing to let people know is, Chingasha already mentioned tomorrow we have the Amitabha recitation starting at 7:30 in the morning, going to 5 p.m. So people are welcome to come join for one day Amitabha Buddha recitation. If you also know, right now happening to see 10,000 Buddhas is the 10,000 Buddhas repentance. So people, that's going to be going on for another 2 weeks. Otherwise, the schedule in the monastery is more or less the same. We have our regular classes. We're about to finish up the semester, so if you want to come to our classes, I think you want to catch it in the next two weeks, because after that, we're going to be taking our summer break. So you can catch your last little bit of Dharma before the summer break. The other event that we have is Buddha Root Farm, and that's from June 7th to June 13th. So we ask the people who were interested in going to Buddha Root Farm to please sign up online. The website is oregon.berkeleymonastery.org. And that's usually a very fun retreat where everybody gets to camp out in nature, learn some. I believe that the topic this year is going to be on Samantabhadra's practices and vows. But I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that might be the topic. And so we get to explore more Mahayana practices. So, okay. Yeah? Yeah. Next Monday is Shifu's birthday? Oh, okay. Okay. First birthday. Okay, so Yuan was just mentioning that this upcoming Monday, is going to be Master Hua's birthday. And she said that, okay, so usually monastics don't celebrate their birthday. And somebody asked Master, says, well, really, if we really want to celebrate your birthday as your disciple, what should we do? So, well, you could recite the Buddha's name or the Bodhisattva's name. That can be a way you can celebrate my birthday.
I've also heard it mentioned before that if anyone wants to make vows, to make it on really auspicious days, like the Buddha's birthday. If you want to make it on Brahma Master's birthday, that would be a really good day to think about what vow you would like to make and sincerely make a vow.
Okay, so there's nothing else that I left out. We have our dedication of merit, which is on the back of your sheet, the Dharma request sheet. No? So I believe people know, I don't know too many details. No, it's okay. That there's that big earthquake in Nepal, so if people want to send merit there, I can see there's definitely a lot of suffering from disasters in the world. But people can send out your merit wherever you wish, for the well-being of the planet, well-being of all beings. Definitely the world needs it. Okay, and so please put your palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, stand and bow to the Buddhas.